Akron thriving. And so the question is, are you a catalytic vessel? Or are you one that wants to continue to sit on the sideline and outsource not only the responsibility, but also outsource the pain that has come with not accepting the responsibilities? If you said, I don't know, Jesus said, hey man, listen, if somebody approaches you and hits you on the cheek, give them the other cheek. White brothers and sisters, this is what I'm saying. I've been hit a lot in my cheeks as a black man. What I need you to do now is give your cheek up for mine. Give them the other cheek. I want to step White brothers and sisters, this is you, brother, because I've been seeing the beating you've been taking. That's what happens when you come to an intersection. Everybody comes and everybody stops and they pause, and we have to acknowledge, but not only do we have to acknowledge one another's presence, but we yield to one another's presence. You're going to have the opportunity to do the same thing. So we look forward to having you on July the 15th, and then the following week at the next steps. It's not going to be a panel. This is going to be us coming together and having dialogue. We're going to break everybody down into separate Zoom rooms, if you will, to have more of an impactful and intimate conversation about these two things, because this is where it's going to start. It's going to start by us talking, by us having the conversation, and going a little bit deeper with one another and a little bit wider. Again, it's about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we look forward to having you on July the 15th, and then the following week at the next step. This is about, man, I want to be a catalyst for systemic change. So we have to be catalytic vessels that want to see Akron thriving. And so the question is, are you a catalytic vessel? Or are you one that wants to continue to sit on the sideline and outsource not only the responsibility, but also outsource the pain that has come with not accepting the responsibilities? If you said, I don't know, Jesus said, hey man, listen, if somebody approaches you and hits you on the cheek, give them the other cheek. White brothers and sisters, this is what I'm saying. I've been hit a lot in my cheeks as a black man. What I need you to do now is give your cheek up for mine, and to say, hey, I want to step in for right here for you, brother, because I've been seeing the beating you've been taking. That's what happens when you come to an intersection. Everybody comes and everybody stops and they pause, and we have to acknowledge, but not only do we have to acknowledge one another's presence, but we yield to one another's presence. You're going to have the opportunity to do the same thing. So we look forward to having you on July the 15th, and then the following week at the next steps. It's not going to be a panel. This is going to be us coming together and having dialogue. We're going to break everybody down into separate Zoom rooms, if you will, to have more of an impactful and intimate conversation about these two things, because this is where it's going to start. It's going to start by us talking, by us having the conversation, and going a little bit deeper with one another and a little bit wider. Again, it's about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we look forward to having you on July the 15th, and then the following week at the next step.
Welcome to Love Akron Live. We are so excited that you'd spend a moment here on Wednesday afternoon, or even after our broadcast live, with us. And I do just want to take a second. My name is Benjamin Beaver, and I want to welcome you here to Love Akron Live. We go live every Wednesday at 1:30, and we get to have great conversations. And I want to make sure that you know about July 15th. This is actually part 2 of the black and white conversation, connection versus collision. And the first one was incredible. In fact, our conversation today and our guest today, in some ways, comes out of this movement that we're going into, where we don't want to collide, we want to connect. So let me bring on our awesome folk today. And as you can see, well, first off, of course, driving over there, looking so fly. It looks pretty fly over there. I mean, you're muted, so you look good. How you doing, Coach Kemp Boyd?
Man, I am doing well. It's a great, beautiful day outside. I love the heat, so the hotter, the better. But just out, man, out in my office. And my office is the community of Greater Akron. So excited to be out and about, meet with some really good people, talk about some really good things that we're going to be able to partake in and collaborate with others. And so that's always exciting, man. So always good to be on with you, Ben. Man, how's your day going, brother?
Oh man, I got to be with some amazing people. Got to drive around in my truck that has it only has air conditioning when you drive fast enough.
Oh man,
um,
brother, I done been there. I know what that's like.
oh, it's good, man. It's good. But nah, man, great day, and I'm so excited to be talking to Devin today. So Devin Jacobs, funny enough, it's hilarious. I could literally probably throw a rock at him right now from my house because he's one of my neighbors. Devin, who are you and what do you do? And you're muted, so you look good. But you might want to unmute to tell us who you are. And let me make sure you're unmuted. There we go. Devin, who are you and what is your superpower, my friend?
Connecting with people, apparently. So really, really cool how all of this actually came together. So yeah, my name's Devin Jacob. I am Ben's neighbor, as he mentioned, and I'm actually in a sales role at a local software company there in Cleveland. So, I mean, I guess who I am though, follower of Christ. I'm a husband. I got 2 kids. Just had a new baby girl. She's 3 months old.
Do you guys have any clipper side? It's like bacteria spray for clippers.
Well, let me mute Coach while he's shopping over there. Apparently, this is how we do it on Love Akron Live, guys. Is like Coach said, our office at Love Akron is the community, and that's actually something I get to see with Devin a lot, being his neighbor, which is really exciting. So you are in the sales role. You are my neighbor. But you do something with church that's a little bit different, right? Than kind of your normal, I hate to say normal, whatever good word you want to put in these quotes. Traditional church. What church? What is your church, and what are you guys looking to do?
Yeah, so we're just a small house church. We have a couple families, couple single people, but to be honest with you, we're looking for a lot more diversity. And I think that isn't just, all single married, but also older folks, people from different backgrounds, people of color, like my dad's Indian, so we want more diversity, because to be honest with you, the body of Christ is diverse. And so that really, I think, is the heart behind the house church. It's really just more about drilling down and saying we're about making disciples and multiplying. So
oh my gosh, man, I love that. And if you're just joining us here at Love Akron Live, at Love Akron, we are a Christian-based organization, but we connect across all sectors. So you don't have to be a Christian to love Akron is kind of our thing. But we want to connect, convene, and collaborate with change makers. And we truly do believe that Devin is making those steps in life to be a change maker. Now, just the other day, and you might have heard the story earlier on last week, how Coach scared the crap out of me at my house because he was over at Devin's house, and I'm listening to a podcast, I'm in my zone, and then all of a sudden I hear, "Hi!" and I'm like, whoa, like literally jumped out of my skin kind of thing, and Coach just laughs. Oh, I loved it, but I'm going to try to get him back at some point, so I'll keep you up to date on that. So Coach, talk to me a little bit. You got together, actually had wonderful, I don't know if you guys like to call her, but First Lady Stacy, of course. And you guys got to get together with Devin and his wife Lindsay. Tell me kind of what this conversation was, because this really encapsulates the conversations you've been having the last 2 months.
Yeah, well, 2 months. I'd say the last probably 3.5 weeks. But at the same time, I think the one thing that it just came from, and this is how things work, right? It's just sometimes it's connection, sometimes it's people knowing other people. And so I had met them, or actually got an invitation from a sister of mine who I know, Jen, and she says, "Oh man, you got to come and meet them. They're great, right?" And I said, "Hey, yeah, I'm always for that." And so And I think that's some of the challenges. We have to be willing to lean into some areas sometimes with people we don't like in order to build, if you will, some of these relationships. So Stacey and myself went over, had dinner with, like you said, Devin and his wife, and Jen and her husband. And really it was just, first of all, it was just great fellowshipping together as believers at the end of the day. But then two, having to lean into some of these discussions, as Devin says, about, man, how can we be more diverse and what can we do, right? Like, Devin's really on, I would say, a mission with, man, how can I bring my house church people, if you will, into some of these gaps, into some of these hard places or uncomfortable places where we can be of service. And so, what I appreciated is the heart behind it, the desire to want to do that, but also be able to say, hey, Devin, let's move at the speed of trust here. Like, let us get to know one another in a really great way. And then what'll happen, I believe, somewhat organically, is it's going to birth out what we do. But it was through conversation. Now, this is key, right? It was through conversation that we started realizing how much we have in common and how similar we were. Okay. Now, we knew visually that we were different in age, different ethnicity wise, different in who got the great looks, me, of course, and not Devin. And so we were kind of able to see these things. And so I'm going to pray for Devin, because, everybody, not everybody was touched and blessed like Pastor Coach, man. Like,
I got
Coach
that
Kemp,
good facial
right?
hair though.
You know what I'm saying? You do. I give you that. But it was in that moment of conversation of being over his house close to about, 2.5 hours, that we began to understand from one another what we had in common and what made us similar, and our approaches of how we want to make impact in a standpoint of, God's kingdom, if you will. And so how do we impact this? And so, they got to be able to hear Stacey's heart about what she does at First Glance with the Connect, her program that she does with teenage moms, which really, I think, provoked Lindsay and also Jen to say, man, I need to be involved in that. I need to come and be a part and see what that could look like. Even to the point of, as we're talking, Devin's like, hey, man, we can put a meal together, man, for your team, like, and create some of these spaces where we can just kind of get together. And so as you begin to do things like that, and again, man, it's not the big thing all the time. It's not the big event or the big activity, but it's just simply, man, taking the time out, first of all, to get to know one another. And the more you begin to talk, get to know people, now it's like, okay, hey, I see some things where we can start leaning in together a little bit more organically, that it's easier. It doesn't take a lot of our time, if you will. Not saying that time is a wrong thing or a bad thing, but at the same time, you want to be mindful of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think this concept that I've seen it a lot across Greater Akron, where it's like, oh, we'll just get everybody together, one time event, one and done. And what we're saying is that it's actually 100,000 conversations, but face to face. So Devin, I'd love to use this as really kind of typify these conversations, use you as an example within these conversations, because these are the conversations that we want to encourage you that are watching to have. Find somebody that does not look like you, and maybe put some of these things in practice. So Devin, you are probably one of the most outgoing people that I know. You're not uncomfortable with new people.
Yourself, right?
Yeah, other than my well, I don't know, man. You might got me beat. You never know. But like, what was it like, kind of setting up this meeting? Because in a lot of ways, you're like, hey, I need help diversifying. I need help talking to Black people, which sounds so wrong to say it like that. But like, what was that? What was that even like asking? And then those first couple moments, was it? I know the Boyds are just amazing people, but at the same time, there's a little unsureness sometimes, but maybe I don't want to speak into that for you.
Yeah. So I think at the end of, so again, talk about drilling down. If you look person to person. It was a lot of mutual connections that sort of got us to that place. At the 20,000, you take a step back, and I would have to say just God. It was one of the things that we were praying about. And the truth is that you look, I think everybody is looking at all the stuff that's going on right now, and they get so frustrated, they shut down. And that's not what we can do. I think prayer is a powerful response. And so God came through in a big way. And now we've been looking for serving opportunities for, I would say, months. Like, it's been on my radar, and I've been like, what do we want to do? There were some housing project stuff that we could do, because Kemp and I actually talked about this. Housing, affordable housing in particular, it doesn't matter what community, is one of the biggest needs right now in all of America. And so we were looking at some projects like that, but nobody really seemed to want to jump on that bandwagon. So I was like, well, we got a lot of this, race, ethnicity stuff going on. Why don't we get involved with Akron? We are literally right next door to Akron. And so it was crazy how once we started going down that road and praying specifically into that, God just opened up a bunch of other doors. And eventually it got back to, we got back to Kemp and Stacy. So crazy how you knew him, how our one mutual connect, Chris Young, and you all rolled together. And that's just one of those things we could say, oh yeah, it's a mutual connection, but at the same time, there's a mutual heartbeat too. So we were all kind of in the same place, all in the same headspace, and saying, I feel like God's called us to serve, so we need to be actively involved in doing that. How can we do that? I'm not trying to act like I'm going to go into Akron and be the savior of Akron, because I'm certainly not. I need my body, like the body of Christ, my brothers and sisters, to come in and show me how I could be involved, right? I think that's a big miss. Anytime you're trying to have a missionary mindset, you try and go in there and be like the person, act like you know a whole community and culture. And that's, I don't want to say I guess it is bad, and it is a little misguided. Let's just call it what it is. We should not be that proud to think that that God wants us to do anything other than be unified and work with other people. He does not like lone wolves. So we don't want that to be us. And I don't want that to be me.
Dude, so big. So it's this recognition of like, hey, I want to help. And which I feel like a lot of my white brothers and sisters, I've heard that kind of talk. I want to help. I'm not sure what to do, but I want to help. And then it's with humility saying like, I'm going to go ask somebody that might know. What was it like going over that precipice though for you, Devin, from like, hey, we're of the same heart, to let's actually just do the physical, practical thing of like, let's get together. Cause I don't know if you've noticed this, but everyone always says they're busy. It's like the badge of America is, oh, I'm busy. I got so much going on. I'm busy. Like, was it hard to make that connection? Did it take a little bit of time? Just once again, just using this as an example for those that are listening to say like, you can do this too. This doesn't, this isn't for a select few. This is for all of us.
Yeah. So couple things. I got my wife in the corner. She's like, talk about food. I'm like, okay, I'll talk about food, honey. So a couple, I got to make sure I remember these in order. So I think food's a big one. Food's just a great way. You look at Jesus, he's always eating meals with people. Now that's not the only thing he did, because he would have been 500 pounds. And from what I know, Jesus didn't sin. So like that probably wasn't the case, but like he's super involved with other people, sharing meals around a table. It's a great way to break barriers with people. Cause let's be honest, conversation gets awkward, shove a mouthful of food, That,
and it's even better when it's good food. It's especially good when it's good. So it's this thing of saying, hey, come over, we'll make a meal. And like, was that, I mean, Coach, you got like 1,200 kids, right? Like having a dinner date, that's kind of a hard thing to do. Is there a little bit of work there that needed to be done to say, okay, no, we need to make sure somebody's at home?
Yeah, man, it's just getting a babysitter, man, and we handle that. And but I think for us, we didn't want to miss the opportunity, because that's what this season has presented for us, right? Like, is the opportunity to connect with people. And so I've said this a lot, but here in the past, I think we have collided over the conversation of race. And what I think happened when I went over to Devin and Lindsay's house was we were able to connect over the conversation. Why? Because we found what we had mutually connected together. And so even though you have that, that doesn't mean that we were all singing Kumbaya either, right? We still had to have, and we're going to continue to have the conversation of saying, hey, man, this is how it affects me as a Black man. But at the same time with Devin, like Devin is, he's a multi-ethnic person. Like, I wouldn't have known that unless he told me. But in him telling me that gave me a deeper appreciation of his heart and wanting to, I think, really stretch across. But like you said, not trying to run and come in and be the white savior complex either. We're saying that, hey, man, listen. And sometimes it is about posturing yourself as a listener to say, hey, man, I don't know what I don't know. So I'm going to posture myself to say, hey, because I don't, help me to understand, right? And all you're getting, get understanding. From where we stand in our faith and our belief, man, that's a powerful statement that we get in Proverbs, right? And all you're getting, get understanding. So yeah, we could just go out and move and do something, but do we have the understanding of why we're doing it and what we hope to accomplish? Because we want whatever it is that we're doing to be sustainable. We don't want to be one-hit wonders, right? That only magnifies the continual problem that we have. But if we can say, hey, listen, if we can start with one another, if we can start right here at this table with these couples developing and building a relationship, and we can maintain a sustainable relationship. And I heard Pastor Lori Porter, she said this on another meeting we was on. She was like, you have to be careful who you call friends. And see, this is why I don't take this lightly, man. Devin and Lindsay invited us into their home. Like, you ain't getting that a lot, bro. Let's just keep it 100 real, right? Think about this for a minute. We're talking about baseline stats and information. 75% of white people do not have a meaningful relationship with an African American. That's a baseline stat. So we already know it. So now it's about, hey, knowing this baseline of what we know, what are we committed to do about that? And it's not just going out and just running into anybody and say, hey, man, I want to be your friend, have a meaningful relationship, because that might get you socked, right? So you can't do that.
Yeah, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, but you got to move in a place of authenticity to say, hey, man, yeah, I don't know what I don't know. This man opened up his home to me. They just laid their children down. He don't know me from Adam. Like, listen, I don't want to overlook that.
Yeah.
Because, man, I'm listening to Pastor Lori. She's like, listen, people need to stop calling people friends and acting like you got a relationship with people when you haven't even invited them into your house. That's a powerful statement.
Your acquaintances, and it's not wrong to have acquaintances.
Not at all.
But it's a different thing to say. I even think of the fact of how we used to be called the Love Akron Network and how we're just Love Akron now. Well, we didn't want to just have networks of people. We wanted connection. Nothing wrong with networking, but that's
it's nothing wrong with any of that, Ben. But here's the thing, though, brother. And this is different. And this is what I'm going to say about this. This is different based on different groups of people you're talking about. So I'm going to talk right now specifically to a group of people. Okay. The group of people I'm talking about right now is the church, the Big C church. And if we are brothers and sisters in the faith that have become one to represent God's kingdom here on earth, meaning the church, if we're the microcosm of that kingdom, right? Don't sit here and tell me or try to convince me that you have this relationship with whether it's a white person or a black person, right? But it's something powerful when you invite someone into your home, because what that does is, Ben, is it creates a vulnerability that almost invites you into transparency. Think about that for a minute. Like when you come into somebody's house and, you know, we all got kids and we're all working, we're all doing our things. But hey, man, I'm gonna tell you right now, every time you come to my house, man, it's not going to be immaculate. And guess what? I'm not even trying to put up that front for you. You know, I want you into my space because I want to be vulnerable enough to not have it all together, right? Because that invites the transparency to come forth. And so, and this is a funny story. I'm going to say this because I'm sure this is what Lindsay wants me to say. So we got over there and Stacy, man, my wife, she knows exactly. She knows her husband, right? And so she was like, babe, don't get over here and act up. Now, what she means by that is, what Stacy means by that is, I am a picky eater. Like, I don't eat everybody's stuff, man. Like,
that is true. That is truth. I have eaten with Kemp over the last year, and I am amazed at specifically onion rings with one little thing is a sauce. And he's like, nope, not that. And I'm like, wow, I came from a big old family, so I eat anything. But anyways, you go over there.
And so, you know, and again, man, got a beautiful home, beautiful on the inside, done a really great job. And so they said, yeah, man, we got, they were like, yeah, hey, tonight, man, we got some jambalaya we're going to eat. And I'm like, oh. And Stacy looks at me and she gives me this nudge, like, get it together, brother. And I'm like, man, I'm about to come over here to these people that I just met, mind you.
First impressions here. And
I'm not about to eat, right? Because like I'm not a fan, right? But at the same time, that space of vulnerability led me and invited me to be more transparent with them, which really helps to ease things. Because now we're not putting on masquerades, we're not putting on fronts with each other. Hey, man, these are the ABCs of Kemp, man. Like, this is who I am, right? And that's, to me, that's the beauty of relationship and being able to move at the speed of trust and being invited into somebody's home, right? Like, man.
Now, hold on. I'm still on this spot of the jambalaya. Did you eat the jambalaya?
I had a little bit, man. I had a little bit. I had, you know.
What was it like on your end, Devin? Because I'm curious here.
Hey, so this is my thoughts on a very serious note. I thought I did a good job. But here's the thing, we even talked about, and kind of like as a joke, but also kind of serious, you know, Ephesians 5 talks about us submitting to one another out of reverence for Christ. That's all people. So if I know Kemp, you know, like has certain things, he's a text reader. My wife is the same way. So I understand that. I think that we need to have like, you know, grace for one another in that. It doesn't bother me. So next time we made a deal with him, we said, next time it's pasta bar, brother. We'll have everything separate. You know, sauce, meat, this, and cheese. He said, I don't want all that sauce. I was like, you know, that makes actually a lot of sense.
Oh man, but it's that little touch, and I know this seems like such a minute thing, but you know, it could have just been like stuff that all inside and just say, you know what, I don't want to expose myself. And Coach and I have had these conversations over the last year where I've exposed my deep weaknesses to him. And let me tell you guys, it's not a great feeling during it because I want everybody to think I got stuff together.
Come on now.
But let me tell you right now, man, I didn't know I was going to be preaching, you know, you're doing that whole thing, but like to get uncomfortable is means of being transparent so somebody can actually know you and love you for who you are. Now, Coach, you look really good on there and frozen. So.
Oh man, I'm frozen.
You look like this. But it's a good look for you. It's a good look. So Devin, what did that do for you? Let's just be open here. We talk about being hot here at Love Akron, humble, open, and transparent. And is there that moment of like, oh shoot, I offended you? How could I have known this? Like, be honest with me, because it.
No, but the other thing with that too is I look at the scripture, it talks about being hospitable. Like hospitable is making other people feel welcome, not making them feel bad because, you know, they are who they are. we could literally have scruples about every single person that we invite into our house because they're not going to be like us. But that's the whole point of hospitality. So you would sit down and get to know people. Like most of the stuff that's going on right now, people arguing. We talked earlier about this. I got friends. Well, the problem with that definition is that semantically it's been watered down so much because we got Twitter followers and we got Facebook friends. Man, those aren't your friends. Your real friends are the people that you see your closest circle, 5 to 10 people.
Yeah.
Right. So the idea that we invite people in to get to know them, to hear them out, and to hear their story. I naturally have a tendency. There was a study done at Stanford. This was a couple of years back. They actually showed it to us at training when I went to train for my company, and they said this guy Moravian, I think he's a Stanford sociologist, psychologist, and he said that words are 7% of communication, tone is 38%, and visual, your body language is 55%. So everybody communicating on social media and all this other stuff, you're only using 7% of communication. The potential impact of that is so low, like you're almost guaranteed to have somebody misconstrue what you're saying. Where I'm going with that is that's why it's so important to be sitting down with people. Like you were talking about earlier, 1,000 people seminar. Not that those aren't effective. People can get stuff from that. But the real, how we fix the problem, people always are asking. They're like, one of the things I hear a lot about with my white brothers and sisters, actually one of my dudes right now in California, she was like, well, that's not, how are we going to fix this problem? That's not a fixable problem. This is a fixable problem. I'm like, it's a fixable problem. The gospel will fix that problem. You just got to invite people into your house and start loving people on a local level. Stop getting your heads in the clouds and thinking that you're going to change everything from the top down. It's a bottom up movement, you know,
which takes a lot more work in a lot of ways, because it's a lot more conversation and it's that spot of vulnerability that is very difficult. It's easy for me to jump on Facebook Live like we are right now and say something. It's another thing for Devin to, talk to me personally. Like we did that we texted the other day about something my son did, and we, and I'm like, yeah, dude, call him out on that. He's like, oh, thanks for permission, man. Like, and I could have taken that as like, oh, he wants to raise my child, blah, 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 blah. But that's the opportunity that you have when it's face to face. So maybe a question to ask. Oh, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Hey, Devin, go back to the 7%, 55%. What was that again?
So it's I can't remember his first name. His last name is Morabian, Mehrabien, I believe. And he was saying that words are 7% of effective communication. Tone 38 is 38%, and body language, visual, facial, all that stuff, that's 55%. So at least if you get on the phone, you're at 45, right?
Yep.
That's the biggest problem right now with all of the bad conversations that are happening. They're all happening on Facebook. Get off Facebook, get off Twitter, invite somebody into your home, talk with them in person.
And so I want to take it even a step further. Most of the interaction that's happening on Facebook in this climate, for some of our white brothers and sisters and some of our black brothers and sisters, this may be the first time that you're even talking to anybody of the opposite race. It's through that median, and you're only effectively communicating with them at a 77% level, when this is why we have to, first of all, like you said, sit down in face-to-face with people, whether it's a Zoom call or whatever, to really start this dialogue. This is why this is so important, because, man, we're not even communicating effectively enough with each other, right? We're talking about 7% is words, just words. And so for all people that are wordsmiths using an abundance of words, and I think that's even biblical, right? So that's not going to get it. But then you say, hey, it's tone. Okay, it's not necessarily what you're saying, but it's how you are saying it. Am I saying it from a place of offense, defense? Am I saying it with a dismissive tone? How am I posturing myself? But then that whole nonverbal body language, man, that's good. That's good. This is why this confirms why we have to do this, right?
Yes.
This confirms why we have to sit down with one another, and we have to talk. We have to break bread. And if it's not in person, then do it over Zoom, right? But let's not any longer create obstacles or barriers when what we've learned based on what we believe, the wall of hostility has been torn down.
Mhm.
But yet and still, we're still hostile with one another. You know what I mean? Like, but this is why, right? Because we're not doing these simple things, and we're using our words, and our words are hurting and they're bothering. And but at the same time, it's just words. I'm not seeing anybody. I'm not seeing their tone of delivery. I'm just typing something down and it's going out. That's good. Thank you, Devin.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's one of the big things our company tells us not to do. Send out a million emails, and like then you start getting to a back and forth with like legal, and then people start getting mad. They say, walk down there. That's why we got a building anyways, and go talk to them. So
Yep.
some people still don't do that though. You'd be surprised. So we all
Yeah.
have a tendency in this digital age to want to just because it's quicker. We got to be careful of shortcutting and just taking like the convenient road. Relationally, face to face, still always better, especially when it
That's
comes
right.
to sensitive conversations.
Yep.
And
Agree.
and
That's good.
even that, and just let you guys know, I put that quote in numbers right here on the live, so you can click on that, learn a little bit more about that. But I would even say that 7% is if you're clear. Like that's like the clearest communication is only going to do 7%. And let me tell you, as somebody that sends out a lot of text messages, and my wife texts me back like, Ben, what the heck are you actually talking about? Like, that's what's happening, except there's not that relational credibility. There's not that built up trust. So then it's taken the wrong way and run with. One thing I want to bring back to kind of the forefront in this conversation. If you're just joining us, welcome to Love Akron Live. I'm Ben. This is Devin Jacobs, and of course, Coach Kemp Boyd. And we are talking about this idea of really communication, but connection. We don't want to just communicate. We want to connect, and we don't want to collide because that's not sustainable. Stories, sharing stories with each other. How much of your guys' conversation actually ended up being storytelling? Like, oh, we did this and we did this and we've done this, we've done that. Any of those stick out in your mind? Was that more of the conversation than, like dictionary definition of social or systematic racism? Like, what did it look like talking this stuff through?
Yeah, I think for me there was some story because again I made reference to Devin just letting us know, man, that he was part Indian. Like I didn't realize that looking at him, right? And so him let me in on that space to let me know that was good. So that was a part of his story. I think Lindsay, the one thing that I remember that drew me in is that, man, she said, man, she was an athlete in college. She played softball, and that she was involved in FCA, and even thinking about, hey, is there an opportunity for me in ministry in that? So, again, when people kind of, again, you let your guard down and you let these things be known to people. And again, that's just an opportunity. And so it reminds me of, I don't know if you guys ever heard of our deepest fear quote. And probably one of the most powerful lines was at the end where it says, as we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And so I've tried to really live my life that way, because we all have innate fear. But if I can be more vulnerable, which leads to me being more transparent, I'm liberating myself. And then therefore, people automatically liberate themselves around you because we're not trying to be puffed up, right? And so I think that's how the stories begin to be told. I don't think people come in initially telling their story, right? Because we want to safeguard that. How much do I let you in on that, right? How much do I let you know some of those details about me? Because Devin just could have been like, no, man, I'm all white all the time, right? But he said, no, I'm like, no, this is kind of my background and my heritage. He didn't have to do that. He could have, he could have rolled out that privilege, if you will, so to speak. But no, he was like, hey, man, this is who I am. And so for me, I appreciated that because that is the beginning of us telling our stories and opening ourselves up one to the other.
What other stories might have popped out to you, Devin? Because this is something at Love Akron that we're really looking at doubling down on, is continuing to open up opportunities for people to tell and communicate their stories, because we believe that that's a bridge between the gaps that we're living in, between silos. So what stories, either something that you said or something they said, that stuck out to you?
So two things. One that was more of like an extrapolated story that wasn't a story, which I'll get to here in a second. The other one was he said how he was talking about something else, but he mentioned a conversation he had with somebody. He said, how often do you think about being white? And people be like, never. I'd be like, I think about every day being black. And so I was like, wow, that's a good point. I've never had to consider that. So just even having that conversation was like, oh, so then take that mindset. And now we're at the end. Kemp and Stacy are leaving, and he comes over to say hi to you. Stacy yells or says, don't yell and don't be yelling in this neighborhood. Now, at first I thought it was funny because I thought she said, oh, it's late, don't be yelling. But then I actually thought, I was like, she doesn't want him to yell because there's a black guy walking through the neighborhood that's mostly white, and she's afraid that somebody might see and start being like, what's going on? And so like for a minute I was like, shoot, is that what she meant? And it stuck with me, man, because we had to talk about it with the friends we had over that night, and it hit me really hard. I like haven't had to consider stuff like that. And so I think it's good. And you know what really made me honestly just feel great about the whole thing is there's a lot of this stuff people talk about, like white bashing. Did not feel that way at all. I felt like the love of Christ, Kemp and Stacy, really good listeners. That's how you could tell somebody really loves the Lord, right? If they're willing to listen well. So listen, not a lot, not really any interrupting except for funny stuff, maybe a joke here or there, but really, I don't know, I would just say mutually blessed all of our socks off. The other couple we had over, we sat for an hour and a half talking about how awesome that was and how excited we were to partner with not just Love Akron more, whatever that may look like, but also with First Glance, which is what his wife does with regards to, single moms and people in the community. And then what Kemp's doing with his boys on the team. So this is all good opportunities. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, guys. As a matter of like, you go out there and hold up a sign, but if that's all you do, that is a waste of time. Don't even, just stay at home. Don't even go out. Like, go, we need to be involved.
Yeah, and it's right. Man, I love that. While he was blessing your socks off, he scared the socks off of me. But it is interesting, man, because I told Miss Lori last week on Love Akron Live, I said it's one of those things, man. Once you see it, as the ignorant white male, as my joke goes, you don't unsee it. I'd like to try to some days, but not really. Like, and I think this is why it's a pivotal moment right now within our culture. And Coach and I were just talking about this last week, that we need to keep this conversation front of mind. And it doesn't mean that, and protesting is good. We're allowed to do that. Like, protesting's great. Like, but what Devin, I'm hearing you say is like, don't just protest. In fact, the greatest protest to systematic racism is inviting Kemp into your house. Like, you want to talk about the greatest protest that you can do? Have a person over to your house that doesn't look like you, and listen to each other. So with that said, over to Coach, and then I'd love to hear from Devin, just kind of in our closing of this time. How that's a great practical steps that I've heard kind of throughout it. If somebody's watching this and says, man, I want to do that, but don't know how, what's the first step, Coach? And you're muted, so you look good, but.
Well, I think, man, I think none of us necessarily know how. So you're in a good group, you're on a good team. And if anybody says they do know how, okay, I would question that a little bit, because in every situation is going to be different. There's going to be people that that you feel real good and comfortable about maybe get next to or going to talk to, and there's going to be people that you don't know. So it's going to be really based on how far are you willing to swim, right? Do you want to stay in the shallow end and do that? And you can do that, and you'll get water on you, and it'll be great, right? Or if you want to take the plunge and get into the deeper end, know that, man, you're going to get really wet, even to the point where you may sink. But at the same time, go into it knowing that, hey, you may be offended. Go into it knowing that you may get a little defensive. What I hope that you would commit to, though, is don't ever leave the conversation. Don't leave it.
Yes.
But acknowledge when you do feel offended. Acknowledge when you do feel uncomfortable. Acknowledge when you do feel like, hey, I don't know what to do or to say. Because if we can commit to doing that with each other, that's how we're really going to grow. Because while we're liberating ourselves through acknowledgement, through truth telling where exactly we are in that moment. And to me, that's what I would tell people. Like, I'd rather talk with people that says, hey, man, I don't know how to do this. Great. I don't either. Right. I may know how to do this with Devin. I may know how to do this with Ben, but I don't know how to do it with a new person because I got to get to know you. And what we'll find is we'll find our rhythm in that relationship, because that rhythm may be different from me and Ben or me and Devin's rhythm. So it's about understanding as we meet new people, whether it's, man, people cross culturally, whether it's people within our own culture, because even within our own culture, we have subculture, right? We'll find that rhythm. But my biggest encouragement for you is knowing that don't go into something or anything thinking like, well, I don't want to be offended. I don't want to be uncomfortable. And I don't want to say something stupid, because here's what's going to happen. All those things are going to happen. And
it's okay. Like,
and it's okay. Just don't leave the conversation.
Yes.
Don't leave it because you felt that way, but acknowledge that you felt that way in that moment and say, hey, I misunderstood. I felt a little offended, and I just want to truth tell that right now and expose it, because that's the biggest barrier, is that we don't expose things in the moment and we allow it to fester. We become resentful. We become bitter. And we don't continue the conversation. And then we say, oh, well, it doesn't work. Yeah, it does work. You just stopped it.
Yeah, it's kind of like working out after the first time. Maybe an example of it. It's like working out. You go once. Man, I'm really glad that I worked out once. I'm not sure if it worked though, because I was looking to lose about 40 pounds. It didn't work out the first time, so I guess I'll quit. Like, but man, Coach, I just love that, man. Continue the conversation. Devin, how are you looking to continue the conversation? Because this is kind of the precipice. Now that I've used that word twice today, I'm not really sure why I like that word so much, but like this is the moment where you go from, hey, we talked about it. Where are you at now, and where are you going?
Yeah, so just to touch on what Kemp was talking about, if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not growing. Okay, so expect things to be uncomfortable if you're doing something new. Like, no, that's just bottom line. So I think like Kemp already summed that up nicely, but I think that's just like another thing we could tag on there. How we're continuing the conversation. Well, I could tell you, and my wife is a speech therapist, so talked about getting involved at first glance with parents who need to just help with, auditory services, whatever that looks like. And we used to live in Milwaukee, and a lot of the stuff she did was in inner city Milwaukee. And the reason why is because the people that need the services the most have trouble getting their kids to these sessions or just being present and that kind of stuff, because they're working 3 jobs and all of this other, and life is so tumultuous. It's so rapidly shifting all the time. So I would say that's a good way for her to serve. For me, I love to cook. So Kent mentioned it earlier, but one of the things we thought about, there's another gentleman who's part of our house church who loved to cook. So we were just talking like, it costs Kemp and Stacy money to bring those boys over. How many people on your football team, Kemp? I think he froze. I think he's muted. Oh, everybody.
My bad. I got 50 players.
Okay. So that gets expensive. But here's the thing, being intentional, honestly, it is kind of expensive. So like, maybe that means canceling your cable subscription or something, because who gets cable anyways? And going to an actual football game with Kemp's boys, or just, taking that money every month and putting it back towards a meal for kids like that. So I'm going to be honest with you. Ben and I really resonate. We're sort of kindred spirits here, but I'm a big creative. So I'm always thinking of ways of how can we be involved. And I think there's lots of ways, but to be honest with you, what Ben, you were talking about, it's just making time, man. You got to make time. Like, it's not optional. If you feel overcommitted, declutter your life. Stop doing so many extracurriculars for your kids and even yourself. Watch less television. That's not important. You're not going to stand before God and he's going to ask you, hey, did you watch all the seasons of whatever show it was that you loved so much? He don't care. So he's going to ask you, like, did you invest in your community? Did you love your neighbor? So that stuff is, I think, like, that sits heavy on my heart. All the other stuff is not necessarily bad things. They're just secondary. Work isn't bad, right? But if it gets in the way of us being involved with the people around us and bearing in their burdens, which I think there's a good amount of that needs to be done right now. So.
Oh man, thank you so much, Devin, for coming on and just kind of being open about this process, because I think it's something where people don't have an example of what works. And I would say, for those that are watching, message us here on Facebook, man. If it's something you're like, hey, I don't know how to start. Well, dude, if you want to talk to people that love brainstorming, man, text or message Love Akron, email us, get a hold of us right here, and let's start that conversation, because we don't want this just to be that nice thing that happened in 2020. If we do that, we failed, in my opinion. We had some nice things. We held up an even longer sign to Devin's example from earlier. But to truly pave the path for true systematic change, it starts with a lot of conversations. So we encourage you to have it. So final thoughts, Coach Kemp, for all of our people listening, for Devin, for the world.
Yeah, man, just allow the moment that has happened to become a movement.
Oh man, I bet this is so good right now. And
let's not allow it to continue in just a momentary stage. But I think all the moments that we'll have with one another, that it's going to help to increase our movement towards, I think, real healing, towards, I think, real continued reconciling work that has already been established. So yeah, let's not stay in too many moments. Let's create movements together. That's what's gonna sustain.
Once again, Devin, thank you for being on, man. And want to invite
Thanks, brother.
Everybody out to next Wednesday, 1:30. It's part 2 of our black and white conversation that is connection versus collision, because we want to connect, have relationships to make true change, not just collide. And so with that, we actually set up something as well, and this video is going to talk about it in just a moment, is this idea of the next step. So you're like, what do I do? How do I take the next step? This is how to take the next step from both our first part of the conversation, if you joined us, that was about systematic racism, and then what we're talking about next Wednesday, which is implicit bias. Got some great people on there. Lady from the NAACP, Jeff Bogue, Grace Church, others that are going to be on there. Just take a look at all the information. And it's just going to be a great conversation. But even beyond that, we want to take it to that next step. And it's actually through Zoom, so we can keep our not social distance, but physical distance, because we want to connect socially. But the main idea here, guys, is to continue the conversation. Don't let this be a moment. We want this to be the start of a movement. Thanks for joining us here at Love Akron Live. Oh, shoot, I totally forgot something. How could I totally forget something? Coach, you still there, brother? Yeah, he probably jumped in just a second.
I'm here.
All right. See, this is what I get, man, for getting going. So let me shut off this share for just a second. All right. So we always end with this, Devin, and all you got to do is say Love Akron at the end, and we're going to cut all these pieces together at the end of the year to show everybody. So if you don't do anything else today, make sure that you
love Akron.
Love Akron. See you guys.
All right, Devin, look forward to connecting soon, brother.
All right, man. Talk soon. See
Yes,
you, Ben.
sir.
See you, bud.
That's cool.
This is about, man, I want to be a catalyst for systemic change. So we have to be catalytic vessels that want to see Akron thriving. And so the question is, are you a catalytic vessel? Or are you one that wants to continue to sit on the sideline and outsource not only the responsibility, but also outsource the pain that has come with not accepting the responsibilities? If you said, I don't know, Jesus said, hey man, listen, if somebody approaches you and hits you on the cheek, give them the other cheek. White brothers and sisters, this is what I'm saying. I've been hit a lot in my cheeks as a black man. What I need you to do now is give your cheek up for mine. And to say, hey, I want to step in for right here for you, brother, because I've been seeing the beating you've been taking. That's what happens when you come to an intersection. Everybody comes and everybody stops and they pause, and we have to acknowledge, but not only do we have to acknowledge one another's presence, but we yield to one another's presence. You're going to have the opportunity to do the same thing. So we look forward to having you on July the 15th, and then the following week at the next steps. It's not going to be a panel. This is going to be us coming together and having dialogue. We're going to break everybody down into separate Zoom rooms, if you will, to have more of an impactful and intimate conversation about these two things, because this is where it's going to start. It's going to start by us talking, by us having the conversation, and going a little bit deeper with one another and a little bit wider. Again, it's about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So we look forward to having you on July the 15th, and then the following week at the next step.